there's a battle royale in the podcast world now between, I guess, Jimmy Dore and Sam Seder. But the question is over this. Jimmy Dore has put out this demand, has gotten people on board. Some people on board with this idea that AOC should withhold her vote for Pelosi as House Speaker in return for some kind of
concession of some kind.
Yeah, or specifically that there should be a vote brought to the floor, a full House vote on Medicare for all. And, Dore is saying that she should withhold that vote unless they get that. She and a few other progressives, if she could get a few progressives together, it's because the way the House Speaker is spoken is by a majority of the full House. So not the show, like the full membership of the House of Representatives. And you need at least a full half of that, which is 218. And Democrats' majority is so small. She would need just a small handful of progressives to break ranks, less than 10, to just they could vote present or they could vote for someone else. If Pelosi doesn't get 218 votes, they have to keep holding the vote again until someone gets 218. And so this is an opportunity to gum up the works, AOC and some progressives in the party. I think they could really craft a narrative here. They could say Biden won because of us. I mean, of course, it was a fairly close election. You could blame, or you could give any number of factors credit, but you could say Biden won for us because of progressive activists who pounded the pavement in Minnesota and Michigan and other states. And they could say that we're going to get some concession and we're not going to vote for you or anyone else for speaker until you give us A or B or C, or A, B, and C.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. And I think the Sam Seder side of it, giving Jimmy Dore credit for the idea. I think the disagreement is on whether it should be Medicare for all, the thing that is put on the table as something they want, the vote for Medicare for all, because AOC went into detail about this in her Intercept interview, that there are a lot of obstacles and challenges and just inconveniences as to why it just wouldn't, it wouldn't pass no matter what, right? Even if it passed, it would be symbolic. And beyond that, you have a lot of people, we already have a running list of who has endorsed the bill. So that gives us a sense who already is on board. And even beyond that, since at this point, it would end up on McConnell's desk, if it passed, let's say, even if it did, really, if we're talking about it passing in the House, but there are a lot of people who would be happy to give a symbolic vote for Medicare for all because they know it's going to die in the Senate anyway. It's kind of like what the Republicans did in terms of trying to repeal Obamacare. Remember when they voted to repeal it some absurd time, like dozens and dozens of times. And then once Trump got in office and they had the power to actually do something about it, they turned into the dog that caught the car.
There's this question over whether a floor vote on Medicare for all is a worthy thing to gun for here, to try to get a few thoughts about that. I like that you brought up the Republicans voting against Obamacare, because I do think that is kind of instructive. I mean, you're right. It's possible Medicare for all could pass the House. Now, it's possible that Dems could get control of the Senate too, narrow control. If you're looking at all possible outcomes, it's possible that it could pass the House and Senate and Biden would have to veto it, which would put him in a hard spot. It probably wouldn't pass the Senate. It probably wouldn't even, well, who knows if it would come to a vote in the Senate. That's another question because the Senate is generally more conservative. But you're right. People could cast a disingenuous vote for it, knowing that it won't become
just to get
law.
The brownie points.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, Biden has said that he would veto it. He doesn't support it. So a few things for that. First of all, I think there probably would be people who would vote against it. They would vote against it because, for whatever reason, just because they're so ideologically opposed, just because they want to build the narrative against it. And then you have something to bludgeon them with in the midterms. They can be challenged from the left. People can say, you voted against healthcare and pandemic. It becomes something you can challenge some people on. Number two, whatever happens with it in the House, it is, again, I think the narrative is at play here. And even though it didn't actually do anything, Republicans kept voting to repeal Obamacare because they wanted to send a message to their base that they wanted to repeal Obamacare, that it was hated with their base. And they're like, we hear you. This is what we'd want to do. I think Democrats need to play that game. They need to take a look at, they need to be conscious of the narrative. And I think that's why there would be opposition from Pelosi or from anyone else to bringing it up for a vote, because they don't want that narrative to be built, right? That Medicare for all is popular and that it is that it's gaining support. There might be a narrative that it's gaining support within the Democratic Party if it does, even if on an insincere basis it passes. So I think it's a worthy thing. It's, it helps build the narrative. It's progressives can take that vote, run with it. It can become a theme in a midterm election, and it gets Medicare for all in the news, maybe temporarily, but something you can do something with. And I think Democrats need to start paying attention to trying to build a narrative. What do you think?
I think there's something to that. When I think of that prize at stake, I just think there are more immediately actionable things that could be asked for instead. I want a Medicare for all vote. I mean, I want a Medicare for all vote. I want Medicare for all passed. And I don't know. I think maybe something along the lines of substantial monthly relief, economic relief and COVID relief, or a temporary, or not Medicare for all in the full sense, but some kind of temporary emergency measure to that effect, which then makes the idea of it on a permanent basis more palatable. Things like that move the needle. I'm not sure. I guess the narrative side thing does move the needle in its own way. But when you look at what Republicans got for their Obamacare votes, they didn't get, they ginned up their base a good deal, but
They ginned up their base. They eventually won back the Senate. They won the presidency.
Yeah, but they didn't win. It wasn't those Republicans who were holding all those votes to repeal Obamacare that won the presidency. It was an insurgent who they're still contending with now, who kind of wrested it from them. So I feel like this is something that will, I don't know, it'll sort of it'll give progressives writ large maybe a higher standing in the public consciousness in terms of what you're talking about, the narrative. But I think there's maybe more concrete things that could be asked for. I do agree that the fundamental thing of AOC and a block of like-minded people withholding their vote for Pelosi on the basis of some demand is appropriate.
I'm looking at this and I'm feeling like the left just needs a win, and they need a visible win here. And you're right, there's all kinds of things that they could try to get now. I mean, I think they should try to get higher cash payments to people in this pandemic. I mean, they could try to get multiple things.